Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in this world. This is Hajin Lee, and I want to share with you some long-term perspectives on Bitcoin. First, as you can see immediately, a long multi-year winter will come upon us in a year and a half to less than 2 years, I think. And I'll share with you how the rationale of technical analysis combined with cycle timing can provide this assessment. Cycle measures purely time. It doesn't give targets, it measures time. So if we're looking at a cycle of this type, we saw that the first peak occurred in the second half, on the latter half of the cycle. The dotted lines represents the midpoint of the cycle. This thereby occurred on the right hand side. That's what they call right translated. And the remainder of the cycle brought it down in a year correction or so. Then the cycle started again. It peaked again on the right half of the cycle. Thereby it was right translated. During the 2018, we saw the 1 year correction. Thereby, in the first case, majority of the time was spent in rising and the minority of the time was spent in correcting. In the second cycle, majority of the time was spent in rising, minority of the time was spent in declining on the corrective phase. We are on another cycle. This new cycle started most likely in December of 2018. We had a buy signal. I am projecting that this current cycle, instead of right translated, it'll likely be left translated. In other words, it'll occur, the peak of the cycle will occur on the left side, on the left half of the cycle, thereby left translated. Now let's put this in the perspective of Elliott waves. Blue wave 1 and 2 represented the start of a massive impulse cycle. Of course, wave 1 would peak on a right translated peak. And of course, majority of the time will be spent in making and developing wave 1, the blue one, and the minority of the time will be spent in putting in blue wave 2. Since blue 3 is the most bullish, usually, most violent moving wave amongst the impulse sequence, it again makes sense that this too will be right translated. It'll spend majority of the time rising and the minority of the time declining. However, we Elliotticians know that wave 5, while still bullish on its ascent potential, especially if it gets extended, in other words, wave 5 will become the longest of all waves, and that is quite likely as a final blow-off phase. However, wave 5 is terminal. It is not in the middle of the impulse or the beginning of the impulse, which usually coincides with right translated bullish peaks. Thereby, blue wave 5 will likely occur on the first half, the left half of the cycle, and thereby becoming left translated. So in this case, within the cycle time, minority of the time will be spent in rising, and majority of the time will be spent in declining. This is when the multi-year winter corrective phase is projected to be. If you thought the correction in 2018 bear market was terrible, you haven't seen anything yet. I often say awareness keeps the panic away. Technical analysis is not based on precision. It's only based on probability. Thereby, it only allows you a probable peak around the corner to identify the most probables and act, trade, and invest on those probables. And if that's the case, then we are projecting that you want to exit well within the wave 5 progression. On hedging.com, gold and silver members have already established that exit strategy, and I invite you also to join, especially because gold memberships will be closed to new members as soon as we hit Bitcoin all-time new highs, and we're not too far away at all. And that means gold members will be closed. That means lifetime lock on annual rates will be closed. Lifetime access to profit trade alerts will also be closed. We can assure you, or from a trading perspective, we'll be shorting this until we can't, until the exchanges go away, until short trading, or any kind of trading perhaps, might become illegalized in Bitcoin. From a fundamental association perspective, one can ask what event could cause something like this, could be associated with this. And I think, to me, the most obvious would be the collaborative, cohesive, planned global attack by governments and central banks on Bitcoin. They will feel more and more, as maybe we hit the 6 figures, the power of Bitcoin to unseat any fiat system. And I think it is during this time, even when you still want to have some positioning in Bitcoin, because there will come a time when Bitcoin will no longer be valued and measured in fiat, but simply in buying power. If I want to buy a property or physical product using Bitcoin, and that price for that product or the property is priced in Bitcoin, the fiat value no longer matters. But from a fiat perspective, exiting in this time frame has to be planned, has to be understood. And I invite you to hedging.com to share in that discussion. I hope you find this to be helpful. Have a great day.